When I discovered my wife Chelsea was having an affair with Casper, a cocky bartender from downtown, I could have confronted them, filed for divorce, or caused a scene. Instead, I did something far more calculated. I recommended Casper for my old position as regional sales manager at Northbridge Industries, a job that looked prestigious from the outside but was actually a corporate death trap. I'd barely escaped myself. You see, what Chelsea and Casper didn't know was that I'd just been secretly promoted to regional director, meaning I'd be Casper's new boss. They thought they were celebrating my failure and his success, but I was actually setting up the most satisfying revenge of my life. Within 3 months, I'd watched this arrogant affair partner crash and burn spectacularly, taking my cheating wife's dreams down with him. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting strategic. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'll never forget the night that changed everything, Tuesday, March 15th, when I came home early from what was supposed to be a week-long business conference in Denver. The Northbridge Industries quarterly meetings had wrapped up a day ahead of schedule, and I was excited to surprise Chelsea with dinner at Belmont's, the upscale steakhouse where we'd had our first anniversary dinner 8 years ago. Our house in Oakwood Heights looked perfect as always. Chelsea had always been meticulous about appearances. The landscaping was immaculate, the driveway freshly sealed, and our silver Honda Accord sat next to an unfamiliar black BMW that definitely didn't belong to any of our neighbors. I remember thinking it was probably one of Chelsea's new clients from her marketing firm Pinnacle Creative Solutions, where she worked as an account manager. But when I walked through our front door, using my key as quietly as possible to avoid startling her, I heard something that made my blood freeze, voices coming from our bedroom. Not just any voices, but Chelsea's laugh, that intimate, breathless laugh I thought was reserved only for me, followed by a man's voice I recognized immediately. Casper Beckett, the bartender from Meridian's Bar and Grill downtown, where Chelsea had dragged me to countless networking events over the past year. He was everything I'd never been. 6'2" with perfectly styled dark hair, the kind of guy who wore $300 cologne, and knew exactly how to charm everyone in the room. I'd always felt awkward around him, like I was wearing the wrong clothes and saying the wrong things while he effortlessly commanded attention. Instead of bursting through that bedroom door like every instinct screamed at me to do, I pulled out my phone and recorded everything I heard. The intimate conversation, the unmistakable sounds of betrayal, Chelsea saying things to him that she hadn't said to me in months. My hands were shaking as I captured 3 minutes of audio that would prove my marriage was over. I left the house as quietly as I'd entered and drove to the Hampton Inn near the airport, where I spent the night staring at the ceiling and trying to process what I'd discovered. 8 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that, and this was how it ended. With my wife in our bed, with a man who made more in tips in one night than I made in overtime. Pay all month. The next morning, I drove home at my usual time, pretending I'd just returned from Denver. Chelsea was in the kitchen making breakfast, humming while she flipped pancakes like she hadn't just destroyed our marriage the night before. She was wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas, and her hair was still messy from sleep, or from whatever had happened after I left. "Morning, honey," she said brightly, not even looking up from the stove. "How was the conference? Did the meetings go well?" "Very well," I replied, watching her performance with new eyes. The hotel was comfortable, very revealing, actually. She didn't even flinch. "That's nice, sweetheart. I made your favorite blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup." I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 5 years, and watched my wife of 8 years lie to my face with the same casual ease she might use to discuss the weather. She asked about the conference, about my flight, about whether I'd remembered to pick up her favorite coffee from that shop in Denver. Every question was perfectly normal, perfectly caring, perfectly calculated, to maintain the illusion of our happy marriage. 3 days later, I came home from work to find the ultimate insult: Casper Beckett sitting at my kitchen table, bold as brass, while Chelsea served him coffee in my favorite mug. The ceramic one with "World's Greatest Husband" printed on the side that she'd given me for our 2nd anniversary. "James," Chelsea said brightly when she saw me, like having her lover in our home was the most natural thing in the world. Casper stopped by to discuss some business opportunities with us. The audacity was breathtaking. Casper stood up with that cocky grin that had always irritated me. extending his hand like we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Hey man, hope you don't mind me dropping by. Chelsea mentioned you work in sales management, and I've been thinking about making a career change." I shook his hand, noticing how he held eye contact just a little too long, like he was marking his territory. "Really? Getting tired of mixing drinks for a living?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm thinking bigger picture, you know, management level stuff. I've got natural leadership skills that are being wasted behind a bar." Chelsea beamed at him like he'd just announced he was running for president. "Casper has such vision, James. You should hear some of his ideas about market penetration and customer relationship building." I almost laughed out loud. Market penetration. Customer relationships. This guy was throwing around business buzzwords he'd probably learned from watching YouTube videos, and my wife was eating it up like he was the next Steve Jobs. "That's fascinating," I said, sitting down across from them. "What kind of management position interests you?" Casper leaned back in my chair, and spread his arms like he owned the place. "Sales management, definitely. I'm a people person, you know. I can read what clients want, give them exactly what they need. Plus, I'm not afraid to take risks, make bold moves. Some people are just naturally built for success." The implication was clear. Some people like him were built for success. Other people, like me, were built to serve coffee to the naturally superior. Chelsea nodded enthusiastically. "Casper has such confidence, such drive. He sees opportunities that other people miss." I watched them exchange a look that lasted just a fraction too long, and I realized they weren't even trying to hide their connection anymore. They thought I was too stupid, too oblivious, too pathetically trusting to notice what was happening right in front of me. "You know what, Casper?" I said, standing up slowly. "I think you might be absolutely right. Some people are just naturally built for bigger things." What they didn't know, what neither of them had any idea about, was that I'd just accepted a promotion to regional director that would make me the boss of whoever took my old job as sales manager. And that old job, it was a corporate death trap that had destroyed every person who'd tried it before me. But they were about to find out exactly what kind of opportunities I could see that they were missing. Here's what Chelsea and Casper had absolutely no idea about: my business conference in Denver wasn't just another quarterly meeting with middle management. For the past 6 months, I'd been secretly interviewing with Northbridge Industries corporate executives for a major promotion that would change everything. The position was regional director for the entire Western Division, a role that came with a $140,000 salary, stock options, a company car, and complete authority over hiring and firing decisions for 5 different territories. It was the kind of promotion that people spent entire careers working toward, and somehow, despite my quiet demeanor and non-flashy personality, I'd impressed the right people at exactly the right time. The irony was perfect. While Chelsea was falling for Casper's empty promises about his natural leadership abilities, I was actually demonstrating real leadership to executives who controlled millions of dollars in revenue. While Casper was memorizing business buzzwords from self-help books, I was presenting quarterly growth strategies to vice presidents who'd been in the industry since before he could legally drink. But here's the beautiful part: my old position as regional sales manager was exactly the kind of job that looked impressive from the outside, while being absolutely soul-crushing from the inside. It was a position I'd spent 2 years desperately trying to escape, working 70-hour weeks just to hit 60% of impossible targets. The territory included 3 of the most challenging districts in the entire company. The Riverside Industrial District hadn't hit sales targets in 18 months because most of the factories were either downsizing or moving operations overseas. The Clearwater Medical Territory required specialized knowledge of healthcare regulations that took years to master, and the clients were notorious for their impossible demands and payment delays. And the downtown corporate accounts were managed by procurement directors who'd been with their companies for decades and treated new sales managers like unwelcome interruptions to their day. I'd only survived because I'd spent those 2 years building relationships one painful conversation at a time, learning which clients were worth pursuing and which ones would waste months of your time before going with competitors. I developed strategies for managing the impossible workload, systems for tracking the endless paperwork, and coping mechanisms for dealing with the constant stress of missing targets that were set deliberately high by corporate to justify budget cuts. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The previous manager before me, David Richardson, had suffered what HR diplomatically called exhaustion-related health issues after 14 months on the job. The one before that, Maria Santos, had been fired after 6 months for failing to meet performance standards. In fact, in the 5 years before I took the position, they'd gone through 7 different regional sales managers. But from the outside, especially to someone like Casper who'd never worked in corporate sales, it looked like a prestigious management position, with a fancy title, a company car, and a salary that seemed impressive, until you calculated it against the actual hours worked. It was perfect bait for someone who was all about appearances, and had no idea what real corporate responsibility actually entailed. My promotion wouldn't be officially announced for another month, which gave me plenty of time to set my plan in motion. As regional director, I'd have complete authority over hiring decisions for my replacement. I could make sure Casper got the job, then watch him drown in responsibilities he couldn't possibly understand, much less handle. The beauty of the situation was that Chelsea had no idea about my promotion. She still thought I was stuck in the same dead-end position that she'd been subtly criticizing for months. I'd overheard her on the phone with her sister, talking about how I lacked ambition, and was content to stay in middle management forever. She'd been dropping hints about how some people weren't afraid to take risks and chase bigger opportunities. Meanwhile, she was betting her future on a man who thought synergistic market penetration was a real business strategy, and who'd never managed anything more complicated than a bar inventory. A man who was about to face the professional challenge of his lifetime with me holding all the cards. What made it even more perfect was Casper's obvious hunger for status and recognition. I'd watched him at those networking events, the way he name-dropped clients, and exaggerated his role in the bar's success. He wasn't just after my wife. He wanted my life, my position, my place in our social circle. He saw himself as the upgrade Chelsea deserved, the successful man she should have married instead of settling for someone like me. The promotion letter was sitting in my desk drawer at home, along with the detailed job description for my replacement, and the salary range that would make Casper's eyes light up with greed. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to dangle the bait, and I knew exactly how hungry he was for the chance to prove he was better than me. In 3 weeks, corporate would make the official announcement about my promotion. In 4 weeks, they'd start the search for my replacement. And if I played this right, Casper Beckett would walk right into the trap that would destroy his relationship with my wife, and his inflated sense of his own abilities. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting angry. Sometimes it's about being patient, being strategic, and letting people's own arrogance lead them exactly where you want them to go. Over the next few weeks, Casper became increasingly bold about his presence in my life. What started as occasional business discussions with Chelsea turned into regular visits to our home, always with some elaborate excuse about networking opportunities or industry insights that he needed to share with her. I'd come home from work to find them on our living room couch, talking in low, intimate voices that would suddenly stop the moment I walked through the door. Chelsea would jump up like she'd been caught doing something wrong, but then immediately overcompensate with excessive cheerfulness. "James," she'd say, her voice unnaturally bright. "Perfect timing. Casper was just telling me about this amazing business seminar he attended last weekend. The keynote speaker talked about disruptive innovation in customer service industries." "Really?" I'd play along, setting down my briefcase and loosening my tie. "What kind of disruptive innovation?" Casper would launch into some elaborate nonsense about leveraging social media synergies to maximize brand engagement across multiple demographic touchpoints. It was obvious he'd been reading business books and memorizing buzzwords without having any real understanding of what they meant. He'd throw around terms like paradigm shifts and scalable solutions with the confidence of someone who'd never actually had to implement any of these concepts in the real world. "Fascinating," I'd say, nodding seriously. "You know, Casper, with that kind of strategic thinking, you might be perfect for a management position I've been hearing about." His eyes would light up every single time. "Yeah? What kind of position?" "Sales management. Regional level. It's challenging work, but very rewarding for someone with the right vision and leadership qualities." Chelsea would practically glow with pride, like I was finally recognizing the obvious superiority of her lover. "See? I told you James would recognize your potential. You have such natural business instincts." The irony was delicious. Here was my wife of 8 years, unknowingly encouraging her affair partner to take the job that would absolutely destroy him, thinking she was helping him surpass her supposedly unambitious husband. Casper started showing up with increasing frequency, always dressed a little better than the time before. One Tuesday evening, I came home to find him wearing a navy blazer over dark jeans, looking like he was auditioning for the role of successful businessman. He'd brought a bottle of wine and expensive Cabernet that probably cost him a full night's tips, and was discussing market opportunities in the hospitality sector, while Chelsea hung on his every word. "James, you have to hear Casper's ideas about customer retention strategies," she said, as I walked into the kitchen. "He's identified some really innovative approaches to building client loyalty." "I'm all ears," I said, opening a beer and leaning against the counter. Casper straightened his blazer and launched into a presentation about how experiential marketing creates emotional connections that transcend traditional transactional relationships. He talked about customer journey mapping and behavioral analytics, like he'd invented these concepts himself. "The key," he said, gesturing with his wine glass, "is understanding that modern consumers don't just want products. They want experiences. They want to feel valued. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves." I nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly the kind of thinking that high-level sales management requires. The ability to see the big picture, to understand not just what you're selling, but why people buy. "Exactly," Casper said, clearly pleased that I was finally appreciating his genius. "Most salespeople are stuck in old-school thinking. They focus on features and benefits instead of emotional engagement and long-term relationship building." "You know," I said, taking a slow sip of my beer, "I should probably mention that there might be some movement in management positions at my company soon. Nothing definite yet, but if someone with your strategic perspective was interested." The change in Casper's demeanor was immediate. He sat up straighter, his eyes focused on me with laser intensity. "What kind of movement?" "Regional sales manager. It's a significant step up from what I'm doing now. More responsibility, better compensation, real leadership opportunities. The kind of position where someone could really make an impact." Chelsea's eyes widened. "James, that sounds perfect for Casper. He's been saying he feels limited in his current role." "It's definitely not for everyone," I continued, enjoying the hungry look in Casper's eyes. "The territory is challenging, the targets are aggressive, and you're managing multiple districts with very different client bases. But for someone with natural leadership abilities, I'd be very interested," Casper said immediately. "Very interested. What would someone need to do to be considered for a position like that?" I pretended to think about it. "Well, they'd need someone with proven people skills, strategic thinking ability, and the drive to succeed in a competitive environment. Based on what you've been telling me about your approach to customer relationships, you think I'd be a good fit?" "I think you might be exactly what they're looking for," I said, truthfully. Because they were looking for someone to fail spectacularly in a job that had destroyed everyone who'd attempted it. Things escalated significantly at Chelsea's birthday party the following month. I'd organized a celebration at Westfield Country Club, inviting colleagues from both our companies, along with friends and family. It was the kind of event that Chelsea loved: elegant, sophisticated, the perfect backdrop for showing off our successful life together. Casper showed up wearing a charcoal gray suit that had probably cost him more than his monthly rent, playing the part of the successful businessman to perfection. He worked the room like a politician, introducing himself to my colleagues as an entrepreneur in transition, and discussing emerging opportunities in the service industry. During the cocktail hour, he cornered me at the bar while Chelsea was across the room talking to her sister. "James, buddy," he said, his breath heavy with the premium whiskey he'd been nursing all evening. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about that management position." "Oh? I think I'd be perfect for it. I've got the drive, the vision, the ability to inspire people to perform at their highest level. Plus, let's be honest," he leaned closer, lowering his voice, "I think I could bring some fresh energy to your company. New perspective, innovative approaches, the kind of thinking that challenges the status quo." I almost choked on my drink. Fresh energy, innovative approaches. This man who'd never managed anything more complicated than a bar shift was talking about challenging the status quo at a company where I'd spent 2 years barely surviving. "Between you and me," he continued, glancing toward Chelsea, I think some people around here could benefit from seeing what real success looks like. What it means to have ambition, to refuse to settle for mediocrity. That's when I realized Casper wasn't just after my wife. He wanted to replace me entirely. He saw himself as the better man, the upgrade that Chelsea deserved, the successful partner who would give her the life her unambitious husband never could. You know what, Casper? I said, raising my glass in a mock toast. I think you're absolutely right. Some people around here could definitely benefit from seeing what real success looks like. So you'll put in a good word for me. I'll do better than that, I promised. Let me make some calls. I think we can make something happen very soon. 2 weeks later, I made the call that would change everything. Congratulations, Casper, I said, barely able to contain the satisfaction in my voice. Northbridge Industries wants to offer you the regional sales manager position. Salary's $95,000 plus commission, company car, full benefits package. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Finally, in a voice that was trying very hard to sound casual, are you serious? James, this is, wow, I don't know what to say. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, I said quietly. Wait until you start Monday. Monday morning arrived like Christmas morning, for someone who'd been planning the perfect revenge for months. I was already in my new office on the 7th floor of the Northbridge Industries building by 7 a.m., watching through my window as employees started arriving in the parking lot below. At exactly 8:45, I spotted Casper's black BMW pulling into a visitor's parking space, and I couldn't help but smile. He'd obviously spent serious money preparing for his first day. Through the window, I could see him checking his reflection in the side mirror, adjusting his tie, and taking what looked like a deep breath to steady his nerves. He was wearing the most expensive suit I'd ever seen him in, a charcoal gray three-piece that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His hair was perfectly styled, his shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and he carried a leather briefcase that still had the price tag indentation on the bottom. I watched him stride through the lobby with the confidence of a man who believed he was about to take over the world. The security guard directed him to the elevator, and I knew he was heading to the 5th floor, where the regional sales manager's office was located. The same office I'd occupied for 2 grueling years, the same desk where I'd spent countless late nights, trying to figure out how to meet impossible targets. My first order of business was the introductory meeting I'd scheduled for 9:30 a.m. All 5 district managers would be present, along with the territory supervisors and key account coordinators. It was standard protocol for introducing a new regional manager, but I'd made sure to add a special twist to this particular meeting. At 9:25, I made my way down to Conference Room B, where everyone was already assembled. The district managers, Patricia Williams from Riverside Industrial, Marcus Chen from Clearwater Medical, and David Rodriguez from Downtown Corporate, were veteran employees who'd seen multiple regional managers come and go. They knew exactly what this job entailed, and I could see the mixture of curiosity and pity in their eyes as they waited to meet their new boss. Casper was already seated at the conference table, looking every inch the successful executive he imagined himself to be. He'd positioned himself at the head of the table, my old seat, and was making small talk with Patricia about exciting new directions for the territory. I noticed he had a yellow legal pad covered with notes, probably bullet points he'd memorized from business leadership books. "Good morning, everyone," I said, as I entered the room, carrying a stack of folders and my coffee mug. "Thank you all for being here on time." Casper looked up at me with a slightly confused expression. "James, what are you doing here? I thought this was a meeting for the regional sales team." "It is," I replied, taking my position at the front of the room. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Casper Beckett, our new regional sales manager. Casper will be taking over the territory management responsibilities that I've been handling for the past 2 years." Patricia raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me, James, but I thought you were the regional sales manager. Are you transferring to a different position?" This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I looked directly at Casper, whose confident expression was starting to shift into something closer to concern. "Actually, yes. As of today, I'm officially the new regional director for the Western Division. Casper will be reporting directly to me, along with the other regional managers in our expanded territory." The silence in the room was deafening.
I watched the color drain from Casper's face as the reality of the situation hit him like a freight train. He wasn't replacing me, he was working under me, and every person in that room knew exactly what that meant. Marcus Chen, who'd been with the company for 15 years, was the first to speak. "Congratulations on the promotion, James. That's quite an achievement. Thank you, Marcus. I'm looking forward to working with all of you in this new capacity." I turned to address the room while keeping one eye on Casper's increasingly panicked expression. "Now, let's discuss Casper's territory assignments and quarterly targets." For the next 45 minutes, I methodically laid out the scope of his new responsibilities. The Riverside Industrial District, where the largest client hadn't placed an order in 8 months, and the second largest was threatening to terminate their contract. The Clearwater Medical Territory, which required specialized knowledge of FDA regulations and healthcare procurement processes that took most people years to master. The Downtown Corporate Accounts, managed by procurement directors who'd been with their companies since before Casper was born, and who treated new sales managers like unwelcome door-to-door salesmen. I explained the quarterly targets, numbers that I knew were mathematically impossible without the relationships and institutional knowledge that took years to develop. I outlined the reporting requirements, the client meeting schedules, and the administrative responsibilities that would consume at least 20 hours of his week before he ever made a single sales call. With each detail, I watched Casper's confident smile fade a little more. His yellow legal pad of leadership notes sat untouched as he realized that none of his memorized buzzwords about synergistic market penetration and customer journey mapping had prepared him for the reality of managing 3 failing districts with impossible quotas. "Are there any questions about the territory structure?" I asked the room. David Rodriguez, who'd worked with me during my entire tenure as regional manager, raised his hand. "James, just to clarify the reporting structure, Casper will be submitting his weekly progress reports to you." "That's correct. All territory managers report directly to me. I'll be reviewing performance metrics, approving major client proposals, and conducting monthly evaluation meetings." Casper finally found his voice. "James, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Of course. Everyone else, let's reconvene at 2 p.m. to review the Q2 client portfolios." "Casper, my office is on the 7th floor." The elevator ride to my office was silent, except for the mechanical hum of the building's ventilation system. Casper stood beside me, staring at the floor numbers as they climbed, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he tried to process what had just happened. My new office was twice the size of my old one, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and a mahogany desk that probably cost more than Casper made in a month at Meridian's Bar and Grill. Corporate had spared no expense in setting up the regional director's workspace, complete with a sitting area for client meetings and a wall-mounted monitor for video conferences with the executive team. "What the hell is going on, James?" Casper demanded the moment I closed the door. "You said you were helping me get a management position. You never mentioned that you'd be my boss." I sat behind my new desk and gestured for him to take one of the chairs across from me. "I am helping you. You wanted a management position with real responsibility, and now you have it. But you're the regional director? How is that possible? When did that happen?"
The promotion was finalized last month. I guess I forgot to mention it during our conversations. Casper's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You set me up. You knew I thought I was taking your old job, replacing you. Did I ever say you were replacing me? I seem to remember you expressing interest in management opportunities, and I provided exactly that. A management position, good salary, company benefits, the chance to prove your leadership abilities. This is insane. You can't be serious about this." I leaned back in my executive chair and looked at him with the same calm expression I'd maintained throughout our entire relationship. "Casper, I gave you exactly what you asked for. If you're having second thoughts about your capabilities, that's something you'll need to work through on your own." "My capabilities? Are you kidding me? Those targets you mentioned in there, they're impossible." "I hit them," I said simply. "Took me about 18 months to develop the right strategies, but it's definitely doable with the right approach." The panic in his eyes was beautiful to watch. Here was the man who'd been sitting at my kitchen table, drinking from my favorite mug, talking about bringing fresh energy to my company. The man who told my wife that some people around here could benefit from seeing what real success looked like. How long did you say it took you to figure out those strategies? He asked quietly. About 18 months, but I'm sure you'll do better. After all, you have those natural leadership abilities. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the parking lot, where his BMW sat next to my new company-issued Mercedes. Your first client meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. with Thompson Manufacturing. They're considering terminating their contract, so it's a pretty important conversation. Patricia will email you the background files. When I turned around, Casper was staring at me with a mixture of hatred and dawning realization. He finally understood that he hadn't won anything. He'd walked directly into a trap that would expose every limitation he'd been hiding behind his confident facade. Welcome to management, Casper, I said. I hope you're ready for what real success looks like. Within the first week, Casper was drowning. The complexity of managing 3 districts, each with their own unique challenges and impossible demands, was beyond anything he'd imagined during his confident speeches about natural leadership abilities and strategic market penetration. I received daily reports from the district managers, and they painted a picture that was both pathetic and deeply satisfying. Casper would show up to client meetings unprepared, having clearly skimmed the background files 5 minutes before walking into the room. He'd promised deliverables he didn't understand, quote prices from outdated catalogs, and constantly interrupt important clients to ask clarifying questions that revealed his complete ignorance of their business needs. The Thompson Manufacturing meeting on his second day was particularly spectacular. Patricia Williams called me within an hour of its conclusion, barely able to contain her disbelief. James, I've never seen anything like it, she said, her voice a mixture of horror and amazement. He walked into that meeting with Randy Thompson, who's been our client for 12 years, and immediately started pitching him industrial lubricants. Randy manufactures children's furniture. When Randy explained this, Casper asked if children's furniture needed lubrication too. What did Randy say? He asked if Casper was joking. When he realized Casper was serious, he ended the meeting and called me directly to ask if we'd been acquired by a comedy troupe. By Thursday of his first week, Casper was calling me every few hours with increasingly panicked questions. James, I need help with the Henderson account, he'd say, his voice tight with stress. They're asking about bulk pricing structures for medical equipment, and I don't understand the matrix system you set up. That's a challenging account, I'd reply with carefully measured sympathy. Took me about 6 months to figure out their needs and establish a working relationship. You'll get there. 6 months? James, they want a proposal by Friday. Well then, you'd better get started. The beautiful thing about Casper's situation was that every mistake created 2 new problems. When he quoted the wrong price to Clearwater Medical, they not only rejected the proposal, but demanded an explanation for the insulting lowball offer that suggested we didn't value their business. When he promised a 2-week delivery timeline to Riverside Industrial for products that required 6 weeks of manufacturing time, it created a cascade of angry phone calls that reached all the way to corporate headquarters. Meanwhile, Chelsea was getting increasingly worried about her lover's sudden transformation from confident success story to stress-riddled disaster. He'd started coming home to my house, because apparently that arrangement was still somehow acceptable, exhausted and defeated, muttering about impossible clients and unrealistic expectations. It's just a learning curve, she'd tell him, shooting accusatory looks at me across our dinner table. James, maybe you could provide more guidance, some mentorship. I'm giving him exactly the same support I received when I started, I'd say truthfully, which was essentially none. But you've been in sales for years. Casper is transitioning from a completely different industry. The best way to learn is by doing. Casper has all those natural leadership skills. I'm sure he'll figure it out. By the 3rd week, Casper was making serious mistakes that couldn't be covered up or explained away. He'd miscalculated a major order for Riverside Industrial, somehow managing to promise them 500 units of heavy machinery when they'd requested 50 units of spare parts. The resulting confusion cost the company $40,000 in expedited shipping fees and emergency order cancellations. That's when Casper started getting desperate. James, man, I think there might be some problems with this territory assignment, he said. During one of our weekly check-ins, his confidence completely evaporated. The targets they're really aggressive. They're the same targets I had, I replied calmly, reviewing his disastrous weekly report. Though I admit, it took me some time to develop effective strategies. How long did it take you? About 2 years to really get comfortable with the workload and client relationships. The panic in his eyes was absolutely beautiful. Here was the man who'd sat at my kitchen table, explaining how some people were naturally built for success, while others were content with mediocrity. Now he was discovering exactly what kind of success he was built for. 2 years. James, these clients are impossible. Randy Thompson hung up on me yesterday when I accidentally called him about industrial lubricants again. The people at Clearwater Medical won't return my calls. And the downtown corporate accounts treat me like I'm trying to sell them vacuum cleaners door to door. It's definitely a challenging territory. I agreed. But you said you weren't afraid to take risks, make bold moves. This is your chance to prove those natural leadership abilities. Chelsea, meanwhile, was starting to see cracks in her golden boy's facade. Casper was no longer the confident, successful businessman she thought she was dating. He was stressed, making constant mistakes, and beginning to blame external factors for his failures instead of taking responsibility. Maybe this job isn't the right fit, she suggested one evening, after Casper had spent an hour complaining about unreasonable client expectations and unfair performance standards. I can't quit now, he snapped, his usual charm completely absent. That would look terrible on my resume. I'd never get another management position. But if it's too difficult, it's not too difficult. If James could do it, I can do it. I just need to figure out his system, understand how he managed these relationships. What he didn't understand was that there was no system. The job was simply impossible, unless you had years of experience, established relationships, and the kind of institutional knowledge that couldn't be learned from business books or motivational seminars. The breaking point came during week 4. When Casper somehow managed to schedule himself for client meetings in 2 different cities on the same day. He'd promised to be in Riverside for a 10 a.m. presentation with Industrial Solutions Inc., while simultaneously confirming a 2 p.m. meeting with downtown corporate's largest client in the city center, a 45-minute drive away, with no traffic. When both clients called to complain about being stood up, it created a crisis that reached my desk within hours. Casper, I said during our emergency meeting that afternoon, this kind of scheduling error suggests some fundamental organizational challenges. I know, it's just there's so much to keep track of. The calendar system, the client databases, the product specifications. I'm trying to learn everything at once. Perhaps we should discuss whether this position is the right fit for your current skill level. The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. No, please, I just need more time. Maybe some additional training, or someone to help me with the administrative stuff. Casper, this is a management position. Managing administrative responsibilities is part of the job description. That evening, I came home to find Chelsea and Casper having what was clearly a heated discussion in our living room. Their voices were raised just enough that I could hear the tension from the hallway. You said you could handle this, Chelsea was saying, her tone sharp with frustration. You said you had the skills, the vision, the natural ability. I do have the ability. This job is just it's not what James described. The clients are impossible, the targets are unrealistic, and he's not providing any real support. Maybe you're just not ready for this level of responsibility. The silence that followed was deafening. When I walked into the room, they both looked up at me with expressions that revealed everything. Chelsea was starting to doubt her choice in men, and Casper was beginning to realize that he'd bitten off far more than he could chew. Evening, I said pleasantly. How's everyone doing? The look of pure hatred in Casper's eyes told me everything I needed to know. He was finally beginning to understand exactly what I'd done to him, and we were just getting started. 3 months later, Casper Beckett was officially terminated from Northbridge Industries. The final straw came when he lost the Meridian Hospital contract, a $200,000 annual account that had been with our company for over a decade. He'd walked into the renewal meeting with Dr. Sarah Chen, their procurement director, without reading their file or understanding their current needs. Instead of discussing their actual requirements for medical equipment, he spent 20 minutes pitching industrial cleaning supplies. When Dr. Chen politely explained that hospitals have specialized procurement processes for medical devices, Casper asked if she was sure they wouldn't be interested in diversifying their vendor relationships. The meeting ended when Casper suggested that maybe Dr. Chen wasn't the right person to make purchasing decisions for technical equipment, and asked to speak with someone who understands business strategy. Dr. Chen called me directly within an hour. James,
I've worked with Northbridge for 12 years, and I've never been more insulted in my professional life, she said. Her voice controlled but furious. If this is the caliber of management you're promoting now, we'll be taking our business elsewhere. The termination meeting was held in my office 2 days later, with HR representative Joanne Hayes present to ensure everything was handled properly. I had to maintain complete professional composure as Casper sat across from my mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd once imagined himself succeeding. This position requires a level of experience and client relationship skills that we underestimated during the hiring process. I explained gently, reviewing his performance file. Sometimes these things just aren't the right fit. Casper stared at me, and I could see the full realization finally dawning in his eyes. You knew, didn't you? You knew I'd fail from the beginning. I hoped you'd succeed, I said smoothly. But this territory has always been challenging. It requires very specific skills and experience. You set me up to fail. This whole thing was planned. Joanne shifted uncomfortably, but I maintained my calm professional demeanor. Casper, we gave you every opportunity to succeed. The training materials, territory files, and support systems were all available. If you felt unprepared, you should have communicated those concerns earlier. After security escorted him from the building, I received a call from Chelsea. James, we need to talk. That evening she was waiting in our living room, with 2 suitcases packed beside the couch. Her face was composed, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. I know what you did, she said quietly. What do you think I did? You destroyed him. You gave him a job you knew would break him. I sat down across from her, looking at the woman I'd loved for 8 years, and felt absolutely nothing. Chelsea, I gave him exactly what he wanted. A management position, good salary, the chance to prove his leadership abilities. If he couldn't handle it, that's not my fault. You planned this whole thing. Did I? Or did you just bet on the wrong man? She left that night, taking Casper with her. I heard through mutual friends that they moved to Portland, where Casper eventually found work at a car dealership. Their relationship didn't survive the stress of his career collapse, the financial pressure, or the humiliation of being exposed as someone who was all talk and no substance. 6 months later, corporate promoted me again, this time to vice president of the Western Division, overseeing 5 regional directors across 3 states. I bought a house in Hillcrest with panoramic views of the mountains, started dating Dr. Sarah Chen from Meridian Hospital, and discovered what it felt like to build a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Dr. Chen and I had connected during the process of rebuilding the hospital contract that Casper had destroyed. She was brilliant, accomplished, and had achieved her success through actual competence, rather than empty charisma. Our first date was at Belmont's, the same restaurant where I'd planned to surprise Chelsea that night. I discovered her betrayal. You know, Sarah said over dinner, I have to ask about your former colleague, the one who insulted me in that meeting. What about him? How did someone like that get hired for a management position? It was like he'd never worked in professional sales before. I smiled, cutting into my steak. Sometimes people aren't what they appear to be. Sometimes they get exactly what they deserve. A year later, I received a Christmas card from Chelsea. The return address was from a small apartment complex in Portland, and the card was signed by her alone, no mention of Casper. Inside, she'd written a brief note. I hope you're happy, James. I understand now that some gifts come in unexpected packages. I am happy. Turns out, discovering who people really are, behind their charming facades and confident promises, is one of the most valuable lessons life can teach you. The best revenge isn't getting angry or seeking immediate satisfaction. Sometimes it's being patient enough to let people reveal their true character, strategic enough to give them exactly what they claim they want, and wise enough to step back and watch them succeed or fail on their own merits. Casper wanted to prove he was better than me. I simply gave him the opportunity to try. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.